School districts nationwide trying to figure out how to get kids back in the classroom quickly and safely, with new guidance from the CDC now out. But in Philadelphia, the issue is what's not in that guidance. There's no mandate on ventilation. NBC News correspondent Heidi Przybyla asked teachers, parents, and students in Philly about their concerns. Take a listen.
The fans are a really bad solution because, as you can see, they're exposed to the outside, which means they could be rained on. But these are residential grade pieces of equipment, not commercial grade. And from the manufacturer, they're not supposed to be out in the rain. So they shouldn't even be run in rainy or snowy conditions.
That's not concrete enough for me to feel comfortable to first myself enter a building, but on top of that, my son enter a building. He's asthmatic. When I go back to school, he's in 4th grade, so he'll still be virtual learning. But I am into buildings, and my mother, who is immunocompromised, will be watching him.
Isaiah, how do you feel about going back to school?
Well, not that good, because nobody should be getting sick, and I feel that every time somebody gets sick, there's going to be more cases, and I think every time somebody gets sick, it spreads.
In a district like ours, it makes no sense for us to have aging air systems in our buildings. All these buildings should be modernized and up to code. It makes me feel like we're forgotten.
There is no working, functional ventilation system, and that's a big concern for students and staff when we don't have a system to take care of ventilation.
I had put my son back on the list to go, but being as though we have no ventilation reports and the school district is not being consistent and not getting back to me, I feel as if it's not safe at this time for the children nor the staff or teachers at this point.
I'm very uncomfortable with sending my children back to school due to the conditions of the school in terms of, with the current COVID conditions and the plan that the district has came up with. I mean, when you talk about sending our children back to school, you have to take into consideration the health and safety of our children, which are our most prized possessions, as well as the health and safety of our staff at the schools who are there to educate our children.
Heidi joins me now from outside Richmond Elementary School in Philadelphia. Heidi, a lot of concerns there about the ventilation or lack thereof in Philly schools. They are scheduled to partially reopen next week. What else are you hearing from teachers on this?
Yeah, listen, this is yet another tale of underserved communities. Fully 2/3 of the schools here in Philadelphia do not meet industry basic standards for ventilation, according to an outside independent report. In fact, 30 of the schools have no ventilation whatsoever. I'm standing outside Richmond Elementary School here, where you can see that the short-term solution to this has been to put these plastic residential grade fans into the windows attached with plywood and duct tape. And that solution, Allison, is causing an absolute uproar among some teachers and some parents. Take a listen.
My classroom in particular had one of the ventilation fans installed, and the temperature in that classroom with the heating system fully operational was 48 degrees.
I mean, one of the #1 ways to mitigate COVID is through ventilation. And if we don't have a working ventilation system, then how are we managing that?
And that environmental engineer who you saw, Allison, said that it could be possible that when you do not have an exhaust system like you see here, that you actually spread COVID. We saw a study out of Korea, for instance, that when you have an HVAC system, the airflow and managing the airflow and having exhaust is really important, Allison.
So, Heidi, what's the superintendent of schools saying about this?
Right. He says this is a temporary solution. He is in a bad situation, and he is trying to adhere to CDC standards, which say the goal here is airflow. Take a listen to what he had to say.
These are temporary solutions that we were trying to use until we either got systems up and running or that we found other measures or means to do in those schools where we could not turn on our house systems. So we've tested the air in every space to measure the amount of fresh air. And based on that fresh air, it determines how many people can be in that space. And then we apply social distancing guidelines, and we take the lowest of those two numbers.
So the superintendent also told me, Allison, that it's possible they could just hold back students in the schools that don't have good ventilation or that have no ventilation. But again, the teachers union says they just don't have the data at this time to show what is safe and what is not safe.
Yeah. Heidi, this isn't just a Philadelphia problem. Ventilations in schools is a concern nationwide. I know you've been covering this. What are you hearing about this problem outside of Philadelphia? How widespread of an issue is it?
I'm in Philadelphia, Allison, but this is happening everywhere. We have a GAO report, Government Accountability Office report, that came out last year. It's a once in every 10-year report on the state of infrastructure in America. And it found that 36,000 U.S. schools either need major ventilation upgrades or an entirely new ventilation system. So here's the bottom line here. Teachers are not being vaccinated, and this is happening at a time when we know these new variants are spreading. We know that these new variants are more contagious, and we do not know what the effect of these new variants may be on children. And so they say that what they are asking for is pretty simple. They want to be prioritized to be vaccinated. This is happening at the same time that they say, you know what? This reckoning of school infrastructure was long in the making. It's been decades in the making. And COVID has just forced the reckoning that our schools have been underfunded and underserved in many of these urban communities for years. COVID is just forcing it all to the surface.
Yeah, a longstanding problem that COVID is exposing. Heidi, thank you so much for your reporting.
Thank you.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.